Good evening, everyone. This is The Spread. I am Cameron Tarrant. With me, as always, SoCon John Hooper. Although tonight he's repping the D2 Erskine Flyers football program on his
Flying Fleet.
Flying Fleet. Excuse me.
I guess they're 1-2. I could never find a score between them and North Greenville, but they opened up with a win over Barton. I think it was up in Wilson, North Carolina. But the famous thing about Barton is you have to go back and look at the. Have you ever seen the 2007 Division II highlight, like the championship game? It's unreal. I mean, if we could play it on here, it's unreal. Like how this one guard they were down by like 11 points with like a minute and a half. It's crazy. But they had a guard by the name of Bobby Buffalo. I'll never forget that name because it was Bobby Buffalo. But they had a couple good players. So they won the national championship. Little Barton College.
Barton College. There you go. Well, John, we got a good show tonight. Got a lot to talk about. Didn't have a show on Sunday, so we've got really we do have a whole lot to talk about tonight. Obviously, we've gone through 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament to talk through, and it's been a crazy 2 rounds in the NCAA tournament. A lot of unexpected things happening there.
And don't break one of the 10 commandments and tell me that you had most of your bracket right, because that would be a lie.
Yes, my bracket is. I don't know if you can see it, but most of my bracket is red.
Mine looks like Jack the Ripper went through my bracket pretty much.
Yeah, not a good sign at all. But we'll talk some basketball. Got football. We'll kind of talk a little bit about last weekend and another tough loss for the Paladins. Against a really good Chattanooga team.
They're good. I mean, they're
but a tough loss for Furman. Now 2 losses on this shortened season, but VMI still looking good, still undefeated, and an incredible win against Sanford. We'll talk about that game, and then we'll look ahead to this weekend's schedule, make some picks. I did not do good last week, John, on picks.
You don't have to mention it. I mean,
you went 500. You went 5.
Did I?
Yeah,
which is like going 9-1.
I went 4-6 last week, so yeah,
you took one on the chin.
Yeah, it was an ugly week last week. So hopefully do better this week. But
it's probably like the first time I beat you this year.
I don't know. I have to look and see, but you at least caught me by 1 game.
I'm like a fine wine. I age well as a season.
Well, who knows what's going to happen with this season? I mean, if anything, week to week.
I mean, it's like everybody's playing, but they're not. Yeah. It's like,
yeah,
I mean, literally. Oh, we're preparing for the fall. Which I mean, okay, I guess technically, I mean, Furman's still in it, but now they're in prepare for fall mode. But
it that second loss really did hurt them. But crazy things have happened. So crazier things have happened. So I wouldn't count them completely out, but they'll need a lot of help in order to.
I'll have to sit down and look at it later.
They would
need solving a quadratic equation.
They would probably need Chattanooga and VMI to both lose out.
Yeah, but
I don't know about.
I don't know. They'd only have to lose like 3 or 4 or 2 or 3 or whatever. I don't even know how Chattanooga's going to work, because I don't even know if they can make up their game with VMI.
Well, they may have to if both teams are undefeated.
But if they do it on well, that's true. I don't know what the tiebreaker will be if they do it on winning percentage and they have the exact same winning percentage. Exactly. And they can't make up the game. So, like, would it be points scored? Probably VMI gets the trophy then.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how the SoCon's going to do it. But you figure, though, if they're tied, they'd have to make up that game in order to sort of settle who that champion is.
I mean, like,
you'd think.
Furman's had two very tough losses, but and there is a silver lining. I mean, at least you're not Citadel or Western.
That's very true. Well, John, let's get started tonight with the NCAA tournament because I tell you what, they don't call it March Madness for a reason, man. It has been nothing but madness.
Do you think the pandemic has only made it more magnified?
Yeah, I don't know if it's just because of this year, because of everything with COVID, but
I mean, look at Virginia as a perfect example of just not being ready and not shooting well and not being the Virginia that we're accustomed to.
Yeah, and look, it's weird because in years past, I mean, obviously you have upsets, you have bracket busters, things like that, but I don't know, it just seems like it's on a different level this year.
A whole nother level, yeah.
Yeah, this year is the highest
double digits.
Well, but it's if you take the cumulative average of the seeds that made the Elite Eight, or excuse me, the Sweet 16. It's the highest ever average of seeds in the Sweet 16 in tournament history.
Either that or they just got the seeding wrong because of COVID-19.
Could be.
Because, I feel like UCLA was probably not an 11, but they had so many games canceled that you never knew how good they were.
Honestly, that might have been the best path for UCLA. Had they been ranked, seated a little lower, who knows? But because of where they sat at 11, it's gotten them a good sort of run to get to where they are in the Sweet 16 now.
Well, the crazy thing about Oregon State is they were picked dead last in the Pac-12 to begin the year.
Yeah.
And if they do not win the conference tournament, they're not going to the NCAA tournament. They had 5 conference wins. And so now they're in the Sweet 16 and playing really as good a basketball as anybody in the tournament.
I mean, they just beat one of the best Big 12 teams in the country in Oklahoma State.
How good is the Pac-12? They pretty much canceled their whole season almost. I mean, they didn't, but, they had a lot of games.
It was of the 6 teams that from the Pac-12 that made the tournament, 5 of them are in the Sweet 16.
So I believe you're right, yeah.
Oregon State, Oregon.
Which Oregon's a fascinating. The way they dominated Iowa came out of nowhere, and they didn't have to play a game. You remember
because VCU got COVID, and that game automatically Oregon just into the second round.
And I think that would have been a tough matchup because VCU and Oregon would be like on like, whereas Iowa was a little bit different, and they may not have beat VCU.
But I'm sorry, but the way that they beat Iowa there in the second round. It was a little shocking.
Well, they ended the half on a 12-0 run. Remember, it was Iowa had a 2-point lead, and all of a sudden Oregon just couldn't miss. I mean, but Oregon's always been that team that could score. They want to get up and down. Dana Altman was a very successful coach for a long time, I believe, at Creighton before coming to Oregon. And, they've kind of get overlooked. I feel like they're one of those West Coast teams that gets overlooked. But they're always sneaky good,
Yeah.
And,
look, another interesting note here. This year was the first time in NCAA tournament history that 4 teams seeded 13 or higher made the second round.
Yeah. And so, some of those seeds, like I said, are deceiving because they're Power 5 schools, Jay Billis was saying.
But not just that. I mean, look at Ohio. Look at Oral Roberts and what they accomplished getting to the second. And Oral Roberts is still going. Oral Roberts has a chance.
Well, they had the leading scorer in the country, and one of the best offenses. I find this fascinating. Oral Roberts has one of the best offenses, and then you've got teams that have great defense left. Houston, I think, is one of them.
Yeah.
Loyola Chicago leads the country in scoring defense.
Loyola Chicago in that, what is that, the Midwest bracket down there, the bottom right bracket. I think they actually have the best chance out of the 4 teams left in that.
Who's
bracket.
Left in that bracket?
So Loyola Chicago is playing Oregon State.
Wow. Yeah,
and then you've got Syracuse versus Houston.
See, I think so Syracuse frustrates the heck out of everybody because they play a matchup
Yeah,
zone,
what a run by the
and no
Orange.
one attack like against Syracuse. Everybody, this is what's so frustrating. They just automatically want to shoot threes because they're open, and because it's harder to drive the ball against Syracuse. But if you look at it, you're supposed to drive a zone and not shoot. They want you to shoot threes. That's the whole point of it. But you can't pass over those guys because they're so long. They're not necessarily like tall. They're just he recruits guys that have long arms and very good reach and athleticism.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I didn't expect it. Look, Syracuse every year it seems like is some sort of threat in the tournament, but I don't know. This year, this felt a little different. They didn't play well in the regular season. They got tossed early in the ACC tournament, and then
that was a conspiracy. They did that on purpose so they could prepare.
yeah,
Just kidding.
and then here they are in the Sweet 16 with a chance.
Remember, Syracuse didn't play a game for like the first month.
Yeah.
I mean, they play like 2 games because they had COVID bad, I think. And they were sort of like Boston College, although Boston College tried to go with 6 players, if you'll remember that.
Yes.
Which now they're making a coaching change, which brings me back to South Carolina because College of Charleston's Earl Grant is going to Boston College, which seems like that would be a train wreck of a job to take, but you can't turn it down. It's an ACC job.
Yeah. So this is what I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of small. If you got the screen on full screen, you can kind of see what the bracket looks like now. Gonzaga taking on Creighton this weekend, and the Sweet 16, which is an interesting matchup. Creighton, I didn't expect Creighton to get as far as they have. With all the turmoil that they had coaching wise and everything.
Well, I think it was Jim Spanarkel maybe that made the point that Creighton was a very streaky team. They are as good as they shoot, and so they've shot really well the first 2 games, especially from 3-point range. But in their losses, they lose really bad because they shoot really bad. So you got to feel that the odds of them coming up on a bad shooting performance is probably either this round or the next round.
Yeah. Then the winner of that game will take on it's a Pac-12 game, John. USC Oregon. Yeah.
You'll get a chance to see former Wofford Terrier Chavez Goodwin in action.
There you go.
And former Florida Gulf Coast coach, famous for Dunk City a few years ago.
Dunk City. I can't believe it's been as long as it has been for that Dunk City squad. It's been like a decade almost for that squad.
Yeah, I think it was 2012, maybe 2011, 12. They had that guy named. You remember? I always thought of Sherwood Brown. You know, like from Robin Hood. And so. He was such a good player, man. But they had that guy named Savichinen, which looked like a tennis player, and he was sick athletic. I mean, it's like I felt like I was watching Yvonne Lindell dunk it.
Yeah, they're good. So that one's going to be a fun one to watch. Oregon and USC, both teams have been putting on absolute clinics so far.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know, like the thing is, I don't know how good Oregon is defensively in a half court,
Yeah, that's true.
So I mean, like, because I feel like Iowa fell into the trap of we want to run with them, and you can't like really do that, and especially when you have Lou Garza. They should have tried to slow it down a little bit more.
You would have thought that, but they did, and they played pretty up tempo. John, our picks to win the whole thing. Michigan's still alive. They took on Florida State, and then UCLA Alabama, an interesting game as well.
That could be a fun game. From what I understand, UCLA is very good defensively, and then obviously with what Alabama does shooting, I think they make more threes per game than anyone in the country. And they're not very big. UCLA is a little bit bigger, so that could be a contrast of styles. And I mean, I'm not going to say UCLA pulls the upset, but I could see this being a really good game.
Yeah, definitely could be. Michigan still alive. The Michigan Florida State game. Look, Michigan was was close to dropping that game against was it LSU the other week or the other night, John? That was a tight game, but Michigan ended up pulling it out and kind of opening it up in the second half.
Yeah, I think that what happened in that game is, LSU, I watched them play Alabama in the SEC championship. They're very athletic, and they have and Javonte Smart and Cam Thomas, two of the best scorers in
Yeah.
the SEC. If Smart comes down with that little teardrop floater, and it's pretty much unstoppable. And then Cam Thomas had in the SEC championship and in that game, he had 40 points in the first halves of those two games. But I really thought the story for Michigan was Shanzi Brown off the bench, which allowed, I think, Michigan to outscore their bench 24-0 or something crazy.
Yeah.
But even without Isaiah Livers, the impressive thing is how many guys can score for Michigan.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we got Baylor still alive, John, on the other side. Baylor taking on Villanova, which I'm surprised, honestly, that the Wildcats have. I didn't think they'd make it this far, but here they are taking on Baylor. And then Oral Roberts has got to be the story of the tournament so far.
What's the guy's name for Amicus or something, or whatever his name is, the leading scorer in the country? They're very well coached, and they have multiple guys that can score the basketball. They're very good offensively, which obviously Florida couldn't deal with. And, there's a lot of teams in this tournament playing without their best player, Florida being one of them. They had the preseason SEC, all SEC, or SEC player of the year, excuse me. Obviously, he goes down with the heart thing. But you'll find that, Colin Gillespie's another one for Villanova that's not playing in the tournament. So there's a lot of bigger schools out there that don't have their best guy. We mentioned Livers from Michigan. But on the flip side of that, all these mid majors, have those guys. And so one of the games I kind of wanted to talk about is the Loyola Illinois game.
Yeah.
Because if you look at that matchup, that's a sheer man over there for Illinois. Kofi Coburn is chiseled. He's athletic. He blocks the ball like he's spiking a volleyball. And he goes against a guy in Cameron Krutwig that looks like he's the local guy down at the Jiffy Lube that might fix your car. Except he's very good. At all phases, he can pass, he can shoot. He's very good defensively, which, if you're just looking at the guy, you wouldn't assume that. But what a game he had against arguably, not only All-America center, but maybe one of the best in the country.
Yeah, double performance for Krutwig, 19 points, 12 rebounds for him. Yeah, I tell you what, man, that was a little surprising. I'm not surprised that Loyola Chicago won, but the way in which they won, they absolutely shut down Illinois in the first half, built a comfortable lead, and then never really gave it away. And Illinois just didn't seem like had much of a chance.
And you remember Illinois came into the tournament and they were one of the hottest. They were one of the hottest teams in the whole thing. I think they had won maybe 6 in a row. Because it was Illinois that beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. I think that's right. But they were one, and there were a lot of people that thought maybe. I guess they did theirs on winning percentage, but they didn't play all the games because I know the Michigan game I think one of the Michigan games got canceled because of COVID. So I think Michigan ended up winning the regular season on percentage points. But as far as playing the best basketball coming into the tournament, I think it would have been Illinois, as most people would have said out of the Big Ten, maybe followed closely by Michigan.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, biggest disappointments of the tournament so far, you got to say Ohio State just because of losing to Oral Roberts. But more credit, I would say, to Oral Roberts in
Roberts.
that game, in how they played. Virginia, but look, I'm not taking anything away from Ohio. Ohio is very good, but I thought Virginia was one of the stronger teams in the pool, and
yeah, we both did. I mean, what's shocking to me though is even more shocking. What happened to Kansas? What happened to Kansas?
they got boat raced.
I mean,
Boat
that's
raced.
got to be a record for this is the same team that blew out Oklahoma to win was it the Big 12, right? Or not? Did they win they won the championship or not? But
I don't
anyway,
think so. I don't think they made it because of COVID problems.
that's right. That's right. Okay, so their last game
Was
before they had
Oklahoma.
right, and they looked. I mean, Kansas was starting to play really good basketball, and then they lay an egg like that. I mean, goodness gracious. This is a team that fell out of the rankings and then got all the way back in the top 10, right? I mean, just a bizarre season for Bill Self. And
yeah, because they didn't start off. You remember they didn't start off the year all that great either. They dropped out of the rankings and
right. And then they just to get beat like they got beat. I mean, you got to wonder. I mean, is Southern Cal playing that good? I mean,
could be.
I don't know. I mean,
Kansas couldn't score. I mean, Kansas. I mean, what 51 points? I mean, come on, that's
what was it? 82-51? Is that right?
85-51.
85. Golly, man, that's like a. I don't even think Gonzaga won by much more than that against Norfolk State. I mean, it's just, and all these people out there say just want to hand the trophy to Gonzaga. Yeah, I get it. I mean, they're good, but I feel like Oklahoma played pretty well against them. I mean, I wouldn't sit right here and tell you right now that Gonzaga is the UNLV team of the '90s, like the unbeatable. They're not, they're not that team. I think even, and I know they weren't undefeated, but if you look back at the North Carolina team in 2009, which I think they posted biggest blowout wins in tournament history. So I think that was hand.
Lost SoCon John there. I don't know what happened to his feed, but try to got a lot still remaining in the NCAA tournament. A lot to look forward to. The Sweet 16 starting this weekend on Saturday. We'll get the first 4 games of the Sweet 16 on Saturday, and then the other 4 on the other side of the bracket will be on Sunday. Immediately following that, Monday, you get the Elite Eight, first couple of games of the Elite Eight, and then Tuesday night, the final Elite Eight. So by Tuesday night, we're going to know who's going to be in the Final 4 of this thing. So we're getting down to the wire here. For me personally, I'm still alive. My bracket's shot for the most part, but still got Michigan alive. I picked Michigan to win the whole thing, so did John, and got Baylor still going, still alive in it as well. So as long as those two stick around, I'm going to be just fine. So hopefully we can get SoCon John back here in just a second. I don't know what happened with him there. For me personally, though, the biggest disappointment of the tournament so far had to be the loss by Clemson to Rutgers in the first round. I really felt like this was one of Brad Brownell's best, deepest teams that he's had in his 11 years at Clemson. A lot of talent on that roster. You look at the regular season, they had some really good wins. Beat a really good Florida State team in the regular season. Beat Alabama in the regular season there early on. I believe that was like late November. They had some big wins, beating North Carolina. I really expected this Clemson team to do something. I didn't expect maybe a Sweet 16 berth. I wasn't expecting to make an Elite Eight run or anything like that, but I thought at least they could get through Rutgers, get through the second round, and at least make the Sweet 16. Now, Clemson had a couple of tough instances where COVID hit them during the regular season, and then they never did quite bounce back after that remember that first COVID stoppage, they come back and just get absolutely trounced by Virginia. I think they lost 3 in a row or something right there after that first COVID stoppage. And then I think they had another one later in the regular season before the tournament. And they just never could keep it going or get it going. So I'm disappointed to say the least. Look, Amir Sims and those guys had an incredible year. Nothing, not taking anything away from what they were able to accomplish this year, but would have loved to have seen them make a deeper run. And unfortunately for Clemson, it was offensively they had problems scoring at times this year, and so that showed up against Rutgers in a really close game. And give credit to Rutgers for what they were able to accomplish. Got John back. John, where'd you go, man?
I teleported.
I'm over here trying
sorry
to
about that.
No, you're good.
I think my computer started doing its updates, so
you're good. I was while you were away. I was just talking about the Clemson game and how disappointing it seemed. As a Clemson fan and being here in the upstate of South Carolina, really sort of had expectations for Clemson to make a run in this tournament, but they just weren't able to do that.
Did I see today where Rutgers threatened to like push back their tournament game or something?
I believe Clemson players were also a part of that as well.
What exactly was that? I didn't see what it was for.
So there's a movement. There's a movement in the with some of the NCAA basketball players. I believe there's a Michigan player. I believe an Illinois player.
So it's like a union. It's like a
group. Yeah, a group of players have basically started this movement about the NCAA not paying players or giving players money and things like that.
Well, but what is an education? I didn't get to go to school free.
Some people don't see it that way, though, John. That's just the way.
I wish I could have had my education free.
I know. I completely agree with that. I understand, but
yeah, I get. I get I get that, but you're generating a lot of money for the school, but you're also getting. I don't know. Some of these schools cost $150,000 free, for 4.
No, I get it. I see both sides of the coin. I do. I see it, but they used to say, an education was invaluable, and I don't know what happened to that.
Well, the problem you run into, and I know it's a soft subject, is mid-major programs. Those guys are given as much as major programs are, but they're not making as much money. So how that's not really fair to them, Yeah. And the women's swim team, they go out and work hard, why wouldn't they get paid? So just because it's not on TV, or whatever. So that's the problem you run into when you have that argument.
I get it. John, going back to Clemson there, I was kind of talking about how the problem it seemed like for Clemson all year long was their offensive. They would have moments of really bad offensive droughts, and they just could not score.
But don't you feel like Clemson was a little bit different offensively this year with the addition of Nick Honor? He went
cold. He went absolutely cold.
Well, that's the problem when you try to become more of a perimeter oriented team, and you have a guy like that go cold as a streaky shooter. They should have had a great inside-outside game with, you had guards like Trapp and then you had Amir Sims. Arguably, was he all defensive team or one of the best defending post players in the country and scorers in the paint? To me, there have been. I think Amir Sims is very, very talented, but he would go through spells to where, for instance, there was a game, the game the other night against Rutgers, an offensive rebound, he lets the guy go right past him, get the rebound, and lay it up. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And I think the reason Clemson lost that game is they got out hustled. They
did.
Look at the offensive rebounds. Look at the second chance points. that tells the story pretty much of that game. And I don't feel like it was coaching that lost it. I feel like it was just getting outworked.
And look, you hold a team in modern basketball, you hold a team to 60 points, you should be able to win that game.
Right, right. Like in the first half, if you look at, and I know it was ugly, but that was playing right into Clemson's style of play. I mean,
it was low scoring. Rutgers was making dumb mistakes. And then all of a sudden it was like Rutgers got hot from that. There was like that one guy that I don't remember. He got hot from like 3-point, and Clemson just couldn't stop him.
Didn't he come off the bench?
Yeah, he came off the bench in that game.
And he had 2 or 3 in a row, and one of the things I thought about that was, Clemson like you said, they hold them to 60. They should have won. They had a chance to win it, and I know a lot of people on various radio stations will saying, well, is it time to make a change with Brownell? If you talk to coaches, he's a very good basketball. I don't think the coach is the problem because, what was the expectation coming into this year? And you add COVID in there, an NCAA tournament berth's pretty good, and the fourth best ACC team in the tournament coming in. I mean, this year was more positive than negative, right?
Yeah. Problem is, we'll see who sticks around and who leaves after this year.
I think Clemson's issue is not coaching; it's identity. If that makes sense.
They need to. And look, I know it's Brownell's just style of play and how he wants to coach the game and the game to go, but I would like to see Clemson be able to shoot and score a little bit more than They've got
to get there. We've got 2 top 15 players in our state. They've got to. It's like football. You got to get those guys. You got to keep them in state. And for Clemson, I feel like they can capitalize on one of their best recruiting, maybe their best recruiting class under Brownell. They've still got momentum, even though they lost in the first round. And this is going to be a good basketball team, even though they lose. Was it Sims? They got a chance to go out, and they got Hall coming back. He's a very good player, and they can add some really good young talent.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see what 2021-22 season looks like for Clemson basketball. But, John, still got a long way to go in this tournament. Sweet 16 starting Saturday. Looking forward to that. Let's talk a little football now because we didn't have the show on Sunday, and a lot happened in the SoCon.
A lot happened in one game. I mean, Sanford and VMI have played probably maybe the 2 most thrilling games over the past couple of years. Well, everybody that plays Sanford is going to be a good game. 61-55 against the Citadel last year. I mean,
I'm still kind of shaking my head at how Sanford let that game get away from them.
Speaking of holding a team to 60 points, you have 633 yards and 570 passing yards, and
you lose.
You lose. You have 37 points. Come on, that's 2 games.
Well, going into
they've scored 37 points and lost in overtime.
Going into the fourth quarter, I thought Sanford had VMI dead to rights, and then here come the Keydets in the fourth quarter.
Cardiac Keydets.
I like it. Take it to overtime, and then the guts to go for 2 there, and then and get it and win. I mean, VMI.
I like it though. I mean, we saw Chattanooga do it. I like that mentality. I hope it carries over to the fall because I feel like some people are just going for it because it's the spring.
Yeah. You made an interesting note though, John, when we were having lunch today. This is like the 6th overtime game since
1 and 5 in those games. Sanford
for
1 and 5
since the start of 2019.
And the only win of those was, of course, the Citadel. Much to the delight of VMI fans.
And that game was 70 to 60 something.
61-55, which I believe is the highest scoring game in Southern Conference football history, if I'm not mistaken. I know Chattanooga App State 2004 was up there. Furman Citadel 2007 was like second behind, or no, that dropped it to third. So interesting.
You think back, that Citadel team puts up 55. I can't imagine this Citadel team this year putting up 55 on anybody.
I don't know if they put up a combined 55 points.
Yeah.
But like, okay, so look up Jeff Hartzell, who does a tremendous job for the Post and Courier. He put out a tweet the other day, something about them giving up like 25% of their points this spring on the first play or something crazy. Or maybe it's the first quarter. If you remove that, they're tied in the ensuing three quarters. So I found that fascinating. And what is, how are they getting off to such a slow start? I mean, I feel like Furman is kind of the same way in that they play a much better, second half, or, their second halves traditionally this year have been better. I mean, part of that's because Dwayne Vaughn does a tremendous job, I think, making adjustments defensively. But I also think the offense does a good job of making some adjustments.
Yep.
As much as they struggled, I think they have in the second half, which that really wasn't the case for the first time against Chattanooga on Saturday.
Yeah. Going to that Chattanooga Furman game, what happened there, man? I mean, I know Chattanooga's got a good defense.
Well, it's the stat sheet wouldn't really tell you.
Box score and like Furman's offense.
Look at the time of possession. Total yards was 390 to 170, I think. Every stat pretty much dominated by. I mean, Chattanooga has 172 rushing yards.
Yeah.
They have a 100-yard rusher. Furman's leading rusher coming into the game had 9 yards, I think, wait, is that right? Did he have 9 or 7 yards? Did Devin Wynn have
Devin Wynn had 7 yards on 9 carries.
Like, what happened? Like, it's not his fault. I get that. He's got to have somewhere to run.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't tell me that the defensive line from Chattanooga, which is very good, Devonta Maxwell will play on Sundays probably. But you can't tell me they're that much better than ETSU's. Like,
and what happened to the passing game? I mean, Hamp only goes for 121, and he throws 2 touchdowns, but then he throws 2 interceptions. Well,
and I didn't understand. I mean, maybe it was just like a misread, because of the last interception, I guess you had Wayne Anderson or Devin Wynn. One of the two was a receiver on that play. And he overthrows. I don't know if somebody ran the wrong route or if the running back was the only receiver on that play. But he overthrew the guy. But I guess it was just a misread. I think, and I venture to say, that's why I don't know if it's Hamp's necessarily his fault or not, because I don't know if the receiver ran the wrong route on that play, because it was such an easy interception for Jarrell Lawson that I almost felt like the receiver had to run the wrong route on that play, because he was throwing to like a spot.
I don't know, man, but 2 losses now for Furman.
But that's not what. Okay, so the combined mistakes is what lost it. It wasn't that one play. It wasn't.
No, I mean, and look, Furman had a chance again, just like the VMI game. They get the ball. The defense gets a stop, gets them the ball, and what happens? Furman fumbles.
Yeah, and I feel bad for that defense, because they played their butt. I mean, not that the offense. They're just, one side of the ball is executing right now, and the other one's having trouble doing that. And that's, in a nutshell, what's been the story.
And to me, the offensive woes for Furman go all the way back to the Citadel game of last year. That to me is where it started.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously, we talked about Darren Granger break, which I didn't know that broke up with his girlfriend. Obviously, they were pretty serious. But also in that, I think you go back further than that. I would go back to the ETSU game and say they did something to maybe show other teams on film, expose something that Furman was doing, or
Yeah.
that gave away. I mean, I've heard stuff like Granger drops his knee when he's going to pass. I mean, I know that was one the Citadel coaches were saying. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff they look at, that keys them off to what you're doing offensively, and there's some subtlety that maybe one of these young quarterbacks is giving away that
Yeah.
obviously that's because I don't think. I mean, obviously, the offense hasn't met the expectations of the head coach yet, and he even said as much in the post game. And then, like any good coach does, he took responsibility for that. And um, unlike some coaches, I won't name names that kind of throw their players under the bus, but a former coach in the SoCon. Um, but to his credit, he took responsibility for it, and do I think he probably takes more of the blame than maybe he should. Um, because and I don't know whose fault it is, right? Really, but I can't say it's really all the players' fault. I can't say it's all the coach's fault. I just think it's hard. One of the questions I asked Saturday was, you might be in the right play and not execute. Like, how many times are you in the right play and just not executing it
Not
this
executing
spring?
it. Yeah.
Right. And so that's something we never know. But I think by and large, there have been a lot of teams offensively this spring around the SoCon, from what I've seen, that have been in the right play and just can't execute
Yeah.
and turn it over, or, miss a throw on a deep ball. I mean, that's happened all over the league. So I think that's different than maybe ever before.
In this shortened season, though, 2 losses, I mean, essentially, it really does put Furman in a deep, deep hole here. I mean, they're going to need a lot of help from VMI and from Chattanooga and from ETSU, who are all in front of them right now, to kind of step back
Because
a
you
little.
got to believe if somebody ends up with two, let's say Chattanooga loses twice to somebody, to two of their last games remaining. Well, if that's the case, they still beat Furman,
Yeah.
and like VMI still, like, even if one of those two teams loses too, still
They're,
have
Furman's going to need both of those teams to lose 3 times.
right. So, and if they do that, like, they're probably only taking one team anyway. Then Furman would win the conference, obviously, if they had two losses and they had three. So that's the only shot,
That they have.
basically, that they have at an outright, like, because they're not taking more than one at large if they
Right.
take it out.
So they're obviously Furman's off this week. They got 3 games remaining.
But there's still a very important thing to play for. Your ranking going into next season makes a difference. Like, if they stay in the top 20.
Yeah, agreed. But at the same time, you got 3 games left here in the spring. Not really sure there's a whole lot left to play for. Are you already, as a coaching
Well, you
staff,
got two of your rivalries, though. I mean, I would argue that you have Wofford and Citadel, two teams you didn't beat last year.
both those teams are sort of down this year
And
themselves?
you need to, like, if I'm Furman, I'm dropping 70 in the spring. I'm not worried about the fall. I mean, like, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
If you can't stop me, I mean, no one, I mean, well, maybe I shouldn't be the head coach in those situations, but, like,
we got to talk about.
I mean, they certainly would do it to Furman if they had the opportunity.
Yeah, we got to talk about the Citadel, man, because it just keeps getting worse and worse off down there in Charleston for them.
I mean, and I feel like they have good talent. I'm not sure what it is. Like, is it not having the guys available? And I heard that, like, so with the bookstore thing, Brent Thompson suspending 4 different players every game. So, like, two against Chattanooga, he suspends 4 starters, and, like, those are, when you already don't have a lot of those guys, taking 4 starters out is huge.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, if they had their whole team, I think they'd be decent. I mean, maybe that's why there are not more people saying that Brent Thompson is on the hot seat, but I know Citadel fans are upset. I mean, I would be. I mean, because if they lose this weekend, 11 games will be the longest losing streak in school history.
And there's a good possibility they lose this week to Sanford.
But we talked about it at lunch. Jalen Adams on concussion protocol. He won't play. So that means that Liam Welch, and they're coming to town with a full roster of guys, and it's just going to be tough. I mean, I feel like Citadel's defense is much like Furman's, can keep them in the football game. I just don't know how long their offense, now being down their starting quarterback, who I think may have been their best player on offense, it's going to be even more difficult.
Defense keeping them in ball games. What was the stat, John? They've given up touchdowns on the first plays of
three games, or okay, so the one game, the Chattanooga, they were both 75-yard plays by Mercer and Chattanooga, and then the first play from scrimmage against ETSU, a fumble return for a touchdown.
All right, so that was not the defense. We won't.
No, but I mean, it's still the first play. I mean, the other team's scoring. They just found a different way to give one up.
You're automatically starting in a hole, which is not good.
Right, and from what I heard from Jeff earlier this week, I think it's on the Gray Line show, is the guy from ETSU, and I'm not sure which player hit Jalen Adams, but it was ruled a targeting play. So that, I guess he either has to miss half the game or the full game of the next. So ETSU will be down. I'm assuming it's a starter this week. I haven't really looked. But I mean, if it's a guy like Tyree Robinson, who could very well have compete for defensive player of the year, that's huge.
Yeah.
For them, even playing against Western Carolina, because Western has some talent. Western's actually getting better on offense, as crazy as that sounds.
Still can't stop anybody on defense, as Mercer proved that last week, dropping 45 on the Catamounts, which Mercer hasn't. I mean, Mercer scored 42 on the Citadel, but I mean, I
think it's impressive that Western scored 28 points on a pretty good. I think Mercer's defense is pretty strong. I mean, considering what they had allowed coming into that game, and then I think if you look at the starter, Quan Glover, I guess his name is, or Ryan. Is it Ryan Glover? Anyway, their starting quarterback. He's getting better as the spring goes along. I think he was kind of become their leading rusher now when Donovan Spencer's not having a good day. I hadn't looked at his numbers from last week, but I think he had a pretty good day running the ball against Mercer.
Yeah. We'll see what Mercer does. They take on Chattanooga up in Tennessee this weekend. Western Carolina also up in Tennessee as they head to Johnson City, a big rivalry game there. John,
the Blue Ridge border battle, baby.
Yes.
I feel like the Applebee's should have a meal called the Blue Ridge burger or something. Blue Ridge Battle Burger.
They need a trophy. What would their trophy be? We know that ETSU and Chattanooga.
I think it's like a piece of rock or something. Like a piece of the Blue Ridge Parkway.
There you go. ETSU and Chattanooga play for that timber.
A 35 mile per hour sign, because you can't go faster than that on the Blue Ridge Parkway. It takes 5.5 hours to get to Boone.
Yeah. Wofford gets back into action this weekend after having the week off. The 1-2 Terriers find themselves taking on an undefeated VMI squad at home up in Spartanburg.
Wow, this could be this fascinates me because I think if you look at Coach Conklin, I think he does a very good job of scheming on an off week. So I wonder, and also on the other side, I think Scott Wackingham is very good at in-game adjustments, especially on both sides of the ball. Not only offensively this year, but also defensively. I think that's been the biggest surprise. And Sanford got some points, but I feel like the VMI defense made the plays when they needed to.
Yeah.
In that game.
So it'll be interesting to see, though, because Wofford has had some issues defensively, giving up some, like that Chattanooga game, they gave up some yards and some points.
Well, I mean, like if you go back to even their championship years, their secondary has routinely, often than not, has been the weakness of the defense. And they've had some good guys.
They're going to be going up against arguably the best quarterback in the league.
And we already saw, like, who was it that Chattanooga? I mean, they're very good throwing the ball. They're not near the challenge that Sanford
look what Sanford, look what Sanford did to them.
So if you look at what Drayton Arnold did against them, then you look at, Liam Welch has got to be salivating at the opportunity against a Wofford defense that's struggled against the pass.
And they exposed that. And so you got to think VMI will try to do the same thing this weekend as well. And then John,
I don't know how many sacks. Normally Wofford in that 50 defense they play, they're able to generate pressure with 3 linemen, in the 3-4. Yep. So I don't know what kind of pressure they've actually been getting on quarterbacks. I know they had trouble against Chattanooga, but Chattanooga, I think, may have the best offensive line, not only in the SoCon, but one of the best in the country.
That'll be something to watch for them. And then, John, we mentioned Sanford taking on the Citadel. As it stands, it doesn't look like it's going to be a good week for the Bulldogs of the Citadel, but you never know.
At what point we talk about coaches on a hot seat, and I know I harp on it, but Sanford has so much talent. How is it how are they 1-5, and how do you play 6 overtime games in 2 seasons?
1-5 in overtime games, and most of those games came because the other team just in overtime.
Correct. I mean, and I think the funny thing about that is the Citadel had to go for 2 last year and didn't get it against Sanford. So the one team that didn't get it was the Citadel, which they won. But it's just bizarre. I mean, if you look back, I guess they were they were the consensus favorite to win the SoCon maybe 2 years ago when they had Devlin Hodges as a senior. And they go 5-3 in the league, and this is a team that could have very well beat Florida State, and then they go from that to not the playoffs, which is interesting because they had so much talent. I just don't think they're losing a lot of close games under Coach Hatcher, and
the Hatcher can't handle close games apparently, John.
Well, I mean, they've routinely been good offensively, but there's no consistency on the other side of the ball. And that's the issue.
I'll be interested to see which way you go in this game. All right, John, we did not have a good week in our pick'em section last week. 500 that's not bad, all things considered.
This is the hardest I've had gauging SoCon teams, though. It's not. I know VMI and Chattanooga are pretty good. I don't really know. I mean, I think Furman's good some days, and other days they're not very good. But the defense has been a top-level defense all season. Yeah. They've been a top 20 defense in the country all season, maybe 15.
All right.
It just depends on what offense shows.
As it stands right now through the first 5 weeks, John, I've gone 34-16. 29-21 for you.
So I'm 5 games back. You make a little run here.
You need to make a run. Can it start this week? Got some good ones on the schedule this week. Some top 25 matchups around the FCS. We're going to start in the Big South.
Okay.
Goose Creek, South Carolina. The Buccaneers of Charleston Southern.
Also, Ladson,
Ladson, yes, very true. Yep, they actually head up to I believe it's New Jersey to take on Monmouth.
that natural Big South rivalry that has been created there between New Jersey and
Monmouth getting their season started here in the spring.
So you don't just go up to Monmouth. That's okay. So they're, in basketball, they're in a completely different conference.
Yeah.
What
is it like?
But Monmouth is a
NCAA?
team. If you look at their running backs, I don't know if the guy's still there, but they run the ball extremely well. And I think is it Kevin? What's his name? The head coach up there. Very good head coach. He's been there like 30 some odd years. Similar to the old coach at Albany. Similar to former William and Mary coach Jimmy Laycock, who are guys that just stay at their program. Mike Ayers is another example, who just stay at a program for 30 or more years.
Yeah.
And an extremely talented football. He's really brought that program since they moved into the Big South, I believe, from the NEC, if I'm not mistaken. He's elevated that program to a level that maybe it hasn't seen in years. And I'll give you a perfect example of that. Was the last time we had the FCS playoffs, James Madison. They pushed James Madison for a half, maybe 3/4 there until James Madison kind of pulls away.
Yeah.
But that was indicative of the improvement they've made as a program. So I think I'm going to go with them in this matchup against.
You like Monmouth.
Mm-hmm.
You like Monmouth. I'm actually going to go opposite here. I think Charleston Southern. I think the Bucks have actually greatly improved. Look, they nearly upset Kennesaw State just a week ago, John, down in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
It was a 34-19 game.
They've got a good head coach. I mean,
they did a good job. Charleston Southern did a good job of stopping that triple option attack of Kennesaw State and shutting down the run for the most part. I'm going to go with it may be a little bit of an upset here, but I think Charleston Southern's improved. They've got a game under their belt. I know it was a loss, but it was a close game. Monmouth, don't really know anything about them so far here in the spring.
I know that I think they were picked to win the Big South, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Over Kennesaw State.
Yeah, over Kennesaw. They beat them last year. They beat Kennesaw. Which was the upset. Remember, because we were talking about should Kennesaw be included in the playoffs?
Yeah.
Because they lost to Monmouth, and they were still ranked very highly. Obviously I'm proven an idiot now, but because they beat Wofford, but I at the time I was like, man, I don't know in that conference, but now I think the SoCon and Big South have kind of switched places a little bit.
There you go. All right, so we're going to disagree on the first one out of the gate here, John. So maybe we'll see how that goes for the rest of these picks. UNI, number 22 team in the country, 2-3. They head to Western Illinois, take on the Leathernecks.
I mean, I get that they're in the Missouri Valley, but why are we ranking 2 and 3 teams?
And this is a UNI.
I mean, I get it, but everybody you face in that conference is going to be ranked because. I just don't think I think we reward losses.
UNI is coming off a 13-6 loss to Missouri State.
And Missouri State's ranked what?
They're not.
My point. Missouri State is one of the worst teams. I think they might.
3-1. Missouri State is 3-1.
Well, okay, where they were picked. I shouldn't say they are now, but they were picked down there with Western Illinois, who's not very good. There's no Travis Glassford going to show up for Western Illinois anytime soon.
Yeah.
If we have any Missouri Valley, Western Illinois Leatherneck fans, they'll know who that is. But other than that.
Can the Leathernecks get a win, get a tally in the win column? No.
Travis Glassford's not showing up. So no.
All right, yeah, we're going to both go with the Panthers there on the road. How about a game, John, out west in the Big Sky? Cal Poly, 0-2 to start the year. Head to Washington.
You don't just waltz into Ruse Field and the red turf and waltz and get a victory. The Mustangs are just gonna.
Yep. And Cheney, Washington.
Cheney, Washington, home of the Eags. Interesting is they've had some great quarterbacks come through that program. Having said that, I think that They got off to a slow start. I mean, we obviously saw the Idaho loss was a little bit eyebrow raising.
Yep.
I think they've kind of righted the ship now.
Although Idaho may be a lot better than what this year than
Yeah,
what
now
we're
they're
expecting.
receiving
Yep.
votes right on
Yeah.
the cusp of the top 25. They're in the Kibby Dome. So
You don't waltz into the Kibby Dome.
no, you don't. Really, who does? So only the whole Sun Belt, but Eastern Washington, I think, wins pretty handily. I don't know how good Cal Poly's program has translated since Rich Ellerson left a few years back for Army and then got.
Well, I'll tell you where the Mustangs have. Their 2 games this year. They lost 34-24 to Southern Utah, to the Thunderbirds.
You don't just waltz into.
That game was at home. They're coming off a 49-point loss to UC Davis last weekend, 73-24.
And it's funny is UC Davis used to be the laughing stock of the West Coast. Like they were not very good. They were known for basketball, to be quite honest.
And they've kind of flipped it.
They flipped the script. So now, like, and back in the day when Cal Poly was really good and nationally ranked, like UC Davis was unheard of. They haven't been a Division I scholarship program for all that long. But really the past 3 or 4 years, they've been really talented. And I go back to, I don't know what year it was, but I want to say they gave Stanford all they could handle in a game. And that was kind of one of the games that kind of got everybody's attention. So I think I'm going to go Eastern Washington fairly easily here.
Handily, yeah, I agree. Eastern Washington gets a big win there at home as well. All right, John, I mentioned Missouri. You mentioned Missouri State. They get
the Bears.
They host the number 10 ranked Southern Illinois Salukis that are coming off a 44-3 beatdown by the Jackrabbits last weekend in a game that I picked the Salukis. So
how are they number 10 and they have 2 losses?
And they just got boat raced.
I mean, I get they beat North Dakota State.
I know South Dakota State is ranked ahead of them, but I mean, they got absolutely destroyed.
Let's please use the transitive property here because we could go, well, South Dakota State is going to just boat race North Dakota State now.
You would think that, but Southern Illinois beat North Dakota State.
That's what I'm saying. South Dakota State will boat race North Dakota State if we use the transitive property. It'll be like 85-7.
Who was there? What was their other loss? They had another one.
Who? Southern Illinois?
Yeah, I was trying to think. Who was their other loss?
They lost in. Is it Northern Iowa? They lost in. Is that right?
North Dakota. They lost to North Dakota.
I knew it was a North somewhere.
Yeah, that was a beatdown too. They got boat raced.
You cannot tell me the Missouri Valley. Look at the craziness of that league and just tell me that automatically that's the best league in the nation right now in the spring. We got North Dakota, who gets beat down by North Dakota State, and Southern Illinois. That's a team that beat down North Dakota State. The conference makes less sense than the SoCon does right now.
Everybody's literally beating up on everybody in the Missouri Valley. So yeah,
and that doesn't always mean you're the best conference. Like the SEC tries to make that claim every year. Well, no, if you just beat up on bad teams, I'm not saying they're bad teams, but the SEC, even in years when they're mediocre, tries to say they're the best league because they beat up on each other all year. That's just, you can't just say that every year, especially. They probably are the most talented conference this year.
Did the Salukis get a win here, or is it an upset? You think?
Yeah, it's a blowout. I think Missouri. I think Southern. I don't think Missouri State's that good.
I'm going to take the upset. I don't know. I just get.
I won't say blowout, but I think they get the win.
All right, so you're taking Southern Illinois. I'm going to go with the upset. I'm going to go Missouri.
You're going Bears.
I don't know. It just seems right for the Pickens.
The Bears have absolutely no tradition in football.
Well, they're 3-1 this year with wins over UNI, South Dakota.
That's the thing about the spring, though. You don't really know.
Yeah.
Like UNI is going to beat them by like 50 in the fall, and they're going to be like, "Remember the spring?" Yeah, we weren't really
really good. All right, so now we get into a couple of top 25 matchups in the FCS, John. Start out west. Incarnate Word, the number 13 team, undefeated, travel down to Nichols to take on the 3-1.
You better watch your words.
Ranked team.
Watch the words you say.
No Nichols State. No Nichols State. Just Nichols.
Nichols, let's look at their schedule and see what kind of bizarre season they've had. Going beating teams, dropping 100 points on people, and then or 85 or whatever it was, to getting 70 dropped on them by Sam Houston State.
Yeah, so they're 3-1. So they went 87-3 over Lincoln, Missouri. 55-0 over Lamar. 31-24 over Northwestern State, and then got boat raced by Sam Houston State.
You're like, is Sam Houston State cheating, or like what's going on there? Like
71-17.
That's just so. That's like Nebraska used to beat people back in the day under Tom Osborne in the Big 12. It'd be like a conference game. They'd win like 63-30 against ranked Texas or something.
The Colonels. Meanwhile, Incarnate Word's beating people. You got 48-20 win over McNeese State, a 42-20 win over Lamar, and then beat Selah 56-45 last weekend.
I think Nichols wins this game, and
really?
I think that, I'm gonna say it's an upset. I think they've got a lot of. I kind of saw the beginnings of the golden era of Nichols football. I like to think that Yale Vinoy started that back in 2005. People around Nichols and Thibodeau will know what I'm talking about, but I'm sure we have a lot of watchers.
I tell you what, the Georgia fans will never want to see Nichols again after what they did.
Got one out. Didn't they miss an extra point or something? Wasn't it something like that?
Yeah, it was something weird.
Yeah, and they like totally like it wasn't just a fluke either. Like if you look at the stats, it was like Georgia gave up how many yards?
So you're going to take the Colonels. I'm going to roll. I'm going to keep rolling with Incarnate Word. I just think the Cardinals are onto something this year.
Schools that are affiliated with a religious institution lately have been hot in March.
Yeah. How many? That? Like Catholic Christian, like Christian school, like religious.
Look, like Abilene Christian beat Texas. I mean, like
Loyola,
Gonzaga. I mean, they're like
Oral Roberts.
Yeah, I mean, like all these name.
Yeah.
Why not Incarnate Word? I mean,
I like it.
It's a good pick. I mean, I'd still go on Nichols though.
All right, so we're going to disagree there as well. And then a ranked game.
What happens when the Demons of Northwestern State play Incarnate Word?
They've already.
It's like a holy war.
Didn't they play already?
Spiritual war.
No,
I don't know. I'm just saying it's kind of funny.
Well, they hadn't played. No, never mind. They hadn't played yet. So
the Lions really don't fit in my comments. Or I guess you could say Lion of Judah, maybe.
There you go.
You could say that.
But what about Colonel? I mean, Colonel doesn't really.
Yeah, that's. Like, I think KFC or something.
Yeah, right, exactly. Not really.
Yeah, that's kind of their mascot really doesn't fit in. But
not really
still
fit in. All right, John, ranked matchup, top 20 matchup in the CAA this weekend. The Blue Hens of Delaware.
Can I tell you which team is overrated in this match? Who is Rhode Island? How are they getting ranked at 2-0? Have you looked at their football history lately? They literally have not been good since like the 90s. I mean, really, honestly.
All right. Here, they have a 40-37 win over Nova in
Tim
overtime.
Stowers was the last successful head coach at Rhode Island.
And then they actually, John, interesting note, both of Rhode Island's games have been overtime wins.
Against Sanford? No, I'm just kidding.
Nope. So 40-37 over Villanova, 17-10 over Albany, over the Great Danes.
Who is Albany? Like, they have one good win. Like, what is Albany's record? Come on, man.
Albany is 1.
And like, if you beat Villanova, it's like beating the number one team in the country, apparently. I don't even know how good Villanova is.
Maybe Albany's not that bad. Look, they beat New Hampshire. They almost beat Maine.
Okay. I mean, like, I'm not I don't know how good these teams are though. Like, how good is Villanova? What have they done this year?
Villanova is 1-1. Obviously, the loss to
Right. Who do they
Rhode
beat?
Island, Stony Brook,
Oh
16,
wow, that's a huge win. I mean, you
16 to
don't just
13,
waltz in and beat the Seawolves like that, you know? Come
16 to
on.
13.
Like that's why there's such a bias towards that. Like even more, I get the Missouri Valley because they have the credibility to back it up. What has the CAA done? Like James Madison's the only team in that conference that like wins it.
And they've only played like 2 games this year. They've been off for like 3 straight weeks now.
That's what I'm saying is like, how are all these teams staying ranked? Like maybe you should just not play but one game and you'd be like number 5 going into the fall.
John has some deep-seated disdain for the
Did you see
CAA.
where Illinois State had to cancel their season?
I did see that, and people were blowing them up on Twitter about it too. Like,
Yeah, man. Because like apparently they played the coach there, Brock Spack, I think his name, played like I don't know if he played injured players or guys that weren't ready yet or something, but he was like taking the blame and because they didn't. What happened was I think they didn't have enough defensive
yeah, they
linemen.
didn't have enough guys, to fill certain spots.
I kind of actually feel bad for them. Like, I mean, because you know it's got to be hard in an FCS school where you already have less. I mean, it'd be hard for an FBS team to do it,
Yeah,
but like when you're already playing with less scholarships, it's hard.
yeah. John, you like the Hens or you like the Rams here?
I mean, Blue Hens in I don't even know how Rhode Island's ranked. Seriously, Tim Stowers, who was once a Georgia Southern national championship coach, is like the last good coach they've had. I promise. I mean,
Right.
they virtually have no tradition.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm picking Delaware myself
Yeah.
as well, but
They have a great basketball program. Rhode Island beat Kansas, I think, in '98, and Kansas hadn't like lost one game the whole year. But never mind. So yeah, Rhode Island's a basketball school. So I'm going to.
all right, we're both taking the fighting Blue Hens of Delaware. All right, John, to the SoCon now. We're going to start with the Mercer Bears. They have a tough test ahead of them as they travel up to Chattanooga to take on the number 9 ranked Mocs.
Birds and Bears.
3-0. The Mocs coming off a big win over Furman. Wasn't Chattanooga, were they even ranked last week before the Furman game? And now they're like number 9 in the country.
Well, they're kind of like they're kind of that funny story as well because they'd only played 2 in the spring. They played Western Kentucky, remember, back in the fall, and they lost on a horrible call. I mean, that was just, I don't care who you're a fan of. That's just a bad call. They lost that game. Yes. They went from an off week so they had an off week and then they go into the Furman game ranked 11th, but like a whole bunch of people lost in front of them. And then they beat Furman and don't move up from 11th, which is odd because Furman was 12 or like 13th or something.
Well, they're sitting at number 9 this week.
Okay. So they got 2 places.
They got 2
but like virtually like the week before they went from not ranked to 11, which is like, whoa, like.
That's a big jump. Honestly, I don't see
everybody got on their bandwagon or train. It's a Chattanooga choo-choo.
Yes, there you go. I don't think the train stops this weekend either.
No, I think they run right over the Mercer Bears. And Mercer might get a moon pie out of it, but that's about it. And a Coke. Maybe RC.
Maybe Mercer's defense can keep it close for a little bit.
A trip to Ruby Falls and a butt whipping.
Yeah, it's not going to be close. VMI, the Virginia Military Institute, the Keydets, ranked 14th in the country. John traveled to
somewhere. Thomas Haskins has the biggest smile on his face because he's wondering why couldn't they have been that good when I was there and was ended my career as the Division I AA all-time leading rusher at that point.
And the Keydets stay undefeated against the Terriers.
You want to know an interesting story? Look back to 2002. That's the last time VMI beat Wofford and was one of the biggest wins in VMI history. Wofford finished that season 9-3, but because they lost to VMI during the regular season, they did not get in the FCS playoffs with 9 wins.
SoCon John pulling out the stats and pulling out the facts there.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating because that was the year that Furman lost on the 2-point play at App State.
So can the Keydets do something they haven't done in nearly 20 years?
Oh yeah, I think it's going down. I think that streak's coming to an end, like so many have during the spring for VMI in a good way.
VMI.
Rah
VMI. I'm going with the Keydads. Take down Wofford. Western Carolina, ETSU. It's a rivalry game. Blue Ridge Mountain Bowl, whatever you want to call it.
I think about that. You remember the Police Academy movies, and they were never mind the Blue Oyster. But, so the Blue Ridge border battle.
There you go. All right, that's it.
Well, is that onomatopoeia? What is that? Alliteration?
Alliteration.
A little bit of alliteration there by whoever came up with this rivalry. But it is like, so like Western Carolina might be the most improving big 1-4 team in the country, at least on offense. Their defense is just so so I get it. They're last in every major stat in the SoCon. Defense, offense, doesn't matter. But their offense is getting better. It's if they have Daquan Patton back, he's a big play guy in the passing game. Owen Kosinski has had some good games against ETSU. However, I think ETSU wins a close game because they have a better defense.
Yeah.
I just don't know how Western stops Quay Holmes. I mean, they've had trouble stopping their run against everyone this year.
ETSU's highest scoring game on offense this year, 28 points. Do they break?
They eclipse that.
Okay.
I think this one's like, I won't say they blow them out. I think it'll be relatively close. I think it'll be like,
I don't know, man. I don't know if Western's offense is getting better, but I don't know if they're going to be able to handle the Bucks defense.
It depends. I mean, they have the athletes to do it. It's just it depends on how the offensive line plays, because it could be a game where they get 8 sacks again, like they had against Sanford. So if that happens, I think ETSU probably wins like 35-10 or something.
Yeah, I think it's a 2-3 score game.
But more likely, it'll probably be 35-20. I'll give them 10 more points.
All right, there you go. We're both going to take the Bucks to beat Western Carolina. And then finally, John, the team that just cannot seem to win a game. It's been 10 in a row they've lost. Can they break the streak and beat Sanford? Can the Citadel not get to 11?
I want to say, and you might have time to look the series record up between those two. I want to see Sanford. I want to say Sanford, one of the few teams they've actually had a lot of success against, Wofford being one of them. And I think they've had some pretty good success against the Citadel. This is always a good game. If you look at the scores since, I think it was 2008 when they came in this, like every game is like, except like one game, there's one random game in like 2010 that's like 38-0 or something. But routinely, this is a pretty good football game.
They split the series, John, 6 apiece in the 12 meetings,
and all of them are close. If you look at the scores, there's one game that's like a blowout in there,
and that was in 2015. The Citadel won 44-25.
Right. And there's like maybe 1 or 2 blowouts, but I feel like this is going to be a close. Well, I don't feel like this. I'm sorry. I don't feel like this is going to go like the series has gone, simply because Jalen Adams is not there, and their offense has been their problem. I mean, the defense has been really good. Willie Eubanks is playing well. I just think Sanford wins this by 2 scores at least.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't see things getting brighter or better for the Citadel this week. Sanford.
So if that happens, if they get to 11 in a row, is Brent Thompson on the hot seat? Are we starting talking about coaching change?
Yeah, I don't know. I think coaches get a free pass this spring,
even if you're for the spring, and you have a tradition like the Citadel has had. I mean, in recent history, under Mike Houston, and then
understandably, there's been a lot of issues. He had a lot of players leave, and then the situation with the bookstore thing. I don't know.
When you don't have 34 players show up for an August camp, isn't that like a lack of some kind of?
Yeah.
I mean, no one else had that. Like, that's just right. I mean, I'm not one out there to question a lot of head coaches, but if you're missing 30 some odd guys on the first day, that ain't a good sign.
Yeah. So we're both going to take Sanford there to win. So we got a couple, John, that we disagree. We'll see if you can close the gap on me, or I can extend it.
We pretty much, we didn't agree on like the Missouri State game.
Yeah, let's see. You picked Monmouth over Charleston Southern. Missouri State, we disagreed on that one. Incarnate Word and Nichols was one that we disagreed on too. But we all picked the same teams in the SoCon, so
cool.
It's not been
I think it was one of the easier weeks as far as picking.
Wasn't a good week last week, so we'll.
We thought it was going to be last week.
Yeah,
little did we know.
But John, we'll try to get back. We'll get back on Sunday this weekend and have a lot to talk about, because Sunday night, not only will we have had the football schedule played through,
full helping of basketball.
Full helping. We'll know most of the Elite Eight teams by Sunday night. So that'll be.
I don't like the longer layoff this year. We got to do away with that. I mean, we need to be having games like tonight again.
Yeah, I don't know why are they doing like the full weekend between? I guess because of COVID. I'm assuming that.
I guess. I mean, it's good. Like, I'm waiting for somebody like Gonzaga to shoot like 15% now that they had 2 extra days.
Yeah. We'll see how that goes. But looking forward to this weekend, John, and we'll get back to it on Saturday, man.
All right, looking forward to it. Always have fun, man.
Always fun. For SoCon John Hooper, I'm Cameron Tarrant. This has been The Spread.